Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Christina Lengel. With me today is our Northeast Regional Editor, Kristen Smith. And yesterday, Wednesday, we passed a budget in Pennsylvania. And the biggest, I think, ticket item that we saw that really moved the needle on the stalemate that's been going on for so long was the agreement to exit the RGGI Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that puts carbon taxes on businesses operating in the state. So, Kristen, can you tell us a little bit more about the initiative and what it means to walk away from it?
Certainly. So this is a big deal for Republicans, and it makes sense that walking away from this program would ultimately get us a budget deal, right? So 6 years ago, former Governor Tom Wolf wanted us to join 10 other states across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic in limiting carbon emissions from power generators. The idea was, of course, to improve air quality and water quality and the environment at whole and to address climate change. But that was obviously something that those 10 other states, their legislatures had agreed to do. In Pennsylvania, that was not the case. We have a very different economic dynamic as compared to those other states in the compact. And we are one of the nation's largest power exporters. We provide 25% of the electricity for the PJM grid that we're in, which covers power for 67 million people. So it's a really big deal for us. So the effect of taxing generators, essentially, for the pollution that they are creating would have a downstream effect, at least initially, on ratepayers is in the form of higher electricity rates, right? Because they're going to find a way to recover that money that they're losing by paying for these caps and limiting their pollution in that way. And Republicans have fought long and hard to get us out of it. Their main argument has been, it was unconstitutional because the governor did it without their buy-in, and also that it was going to spike electricity costs. And we saw a lot of economic turmoil in the years that pursued or followed. I mean, none of us could have predicted COVID, but that certainly threw the economy into a tailspin. Prices went up, electricity rates got really high. So the idea of making that situation worse was really untenable. And when Shapiro came in, he too was critical of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. But by that point, Republicans had filed with the courts. The lower court had agreed with them that it was unconstitutional, and it was in the hands of the Supreme Court. And Shapiro at that time had an opportunity to just let the lower court ruling stand, or he could have appealed. He chose to appeal because he wanted to, as he says, uphold the governor's authority to do certain things through regulation. And Republicans felt that that was a big slight and a big mistake and a reversal of what he'd said on the campaign trail. And for the next 2 years, they've continued to fight back against it and try to get us out of it through failed bill after bill. Because, of course, now Democrats are in control of the House and the governor's mansion, and they see a lot of value in staying in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative as something that is really is something that Pennsylvania is doing in a meaningful way to address climate change, and that although it will have an impact on electricity prices and raise them a little bit, they will ultimately go down because of the investment into renewable energy. So it's two sides of the same coin in that sense. And the idea that the long-term investment will be worth it, but Republicans are saying that's an unproven. It's hypothetical at this point in their eyes.
Yeah. And since you mentioned Governor Shapiro, I know a lot of the Democrats who have spoken up about, being disappointed about losing RGGI, including Representative Greg Vitale, who actually voted against the budget bill, the only Democrat to do so in the House because of, what it would mean for climate change. And he spoke on the floor of the House and said, I know that my words aren't going to be remembered here, that this doesn't make a dent that this budget is going through, but we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge how devastating climate change already is and will continue to be, and how important agreements like this are. So even that no vote aside, people are already asking, well, what are we going to do instead? Because we can't just let our efforts to combat climate change die with this regional initiative. So what has Governor Shapiro said about this?
Governor Shapiro has been, over the last 2 years, introducing bill after bill that would essentially create a state version of RGGI. So Pennsylvania would work within its borders to limit its carbon emissions, to improve and to grow its renewable energy targets, and to really focus on how to make that transition within Pennsylvania and not so much relying or cooperating with other states that have very different goals and very different energy mixes than we do. This is something that crucially the building trades are fans of, as well as the energy or environmental groups. They see this as, although the environmental groups are less supportive, the building trades, who are the unions that are behind building all of these facilities and we're really worried about RGGI and the impact on the economy, they're with Governor Shapiro on this one. And I think when the first of these bills was introduced almost 2 years ago now, one of the leaders of the building trade said that we're all coming to sit down at the Thanksgiving table, because of course it was around November. And it's collectively called the Lightning Plan. And we all know Governor Josh Shapiro loves a great acronym, a great flashy name for anything. So this is no different. And so he has long said to Republicans in the Senate, particularly, that if you move my bills, I will drop this appeal in Supreme Court and I will walk away from RGGI. And of course, they were resistant to that because they just see his bills as RGGI light. Now, Shapiro, in response to a lot of questions yesterday about when the budget passed, he had said that he really sees his Lightning Plan as the way forward. And it gave the impression that he's optimistic that the legislature will actually go somewhere with it. But in reality, Senate Republicans have not said, oh yeah, well, let's do the Lightning Plan. They're still probably, and I would say likely, very skeptical of that plan. It's also up in the air considering that we are getting closer to the midterm elections. We are getting closer to the gubernatorial election. We are getting ever closer to the presidential election, in which we expect Josh Shapiro to run. So all of those elections have a really big effect on policy, how quickly it moves, how it changes, where it goes to die. So it's hard to say. It might be easy for Shapiro to say, oh yeah, this is where we're going to go without having to face any political consequences, let's say. But that's not to say that he doesn't genuinely mean it and doesn't genuinely want to work on it and that there won't be a deal. But that's where he's at now, hoping that, yes, this is the end of RGGI, but it's not the end of Pennsylvania's climate action goals.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've seen a couple different Republicans refer to RGGI as Shapiro's thing. And as you said, it was something that Governor Wolf instituted, but it'll be interesting to see, in hindsight, how we frame these different initiatives, who was in charge of them, who supported them, and where they went. But we will continue to keep up on that. We'll continue to keep up on the topic of energy and certainly the topic of climate change in Pennsylvania as we move forward. You can find us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.